Federal Natural Resource Management Committee. It's a long handle there. We'll bring this meeting to order. I think first on the agenda would be roll call. So, are you ready?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Senator Dockstetter.
Here. Here.
Senator Larson.
Here.
Representative Davis. Representative Erickson.
Here.
Co-Chairman Worf.
Here.
Co-Chairman Ide.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. So we've got 2 on Zoom, 4 in attendance. I think, I heard Senator Dockstetter, just for LSO's information, is on his way, so he'll be here in person, it sounds like. Thanks for the gallery today. It was a small one, but we've got people online, I think, as well, too. So we'll move right into the first item on our agenda. Item number 2, update on congressional action on enacted Wyoming resolutions. So just so everybody knows, I'm sure you do, we passed 2 resolutions this last session. The first one was for us to get primacy on asking Congress to run legislation to amend the Mineral Leasing Act so we can get primacy on our leasing of federal land, so we don't get boxed in like we did with the last administration, where day one they shut down any new oil and gas leasing, and then it happened to coal, and then we had the Rock Springs RMP. So we're just looking for you know, a little more control over that, so we can control our own destiny here in Wyoming, and they don't cut off our legacy industries, oil and gas, coal, whatever other minerals, and be beholden to bureaucrats back in Washington, D.C. for our livelihood in this state. The other resolution is essentially our federal mineral royalty share, to request an increase from 37.5% to 87, or excuse me, we went from 37.5 to 50% back in 1975, and it was the Wyoming delegation that got that accomplished back in Washington, and it ended up being in the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, FLPMA, I believe, is where that happened, and it benefited all Western states, and it went from 37.5 to 50%. So we're now looking for an increase to mirror Alaska, maybe not even as close. Alaska got 90% of their federal mineral royalties as statehood, so we're asking for 87.5, and that's kind of the crux of this item number 1. And with that, I guess we will go to the first. I guess go ahead, committee, if you want to comment on that, and then we'll bring in any speakers. Yes, Representative Worf, Co-Chairman Worf.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chairman, we might want to just mention, I know that it said that there'd be somebody from the office of Harry Hegeman, Representative Hegeman. That appears to no longer be the case. I also saw, I thought that Cynthia or Senator Lummis was going to zoom in at some point. Did you guys have a time when you thought she would be available?
Mr. Chairman, someone from her office is online now. I can promote her and to bring them in now.
Okay, and I'm going to defer to you, Mr. Chairman, if you want to go with Brad, who's here, or if you want to go with the people online.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Any discussion with committee before we go to our comments here from our congressional delegation and anybody else in attendance? Anybody online? Senator Larson, Senator Dockstetter, any comments? Okay. Yeah, just the last thing I'd like to say is I think it's a big deal. um, with our congressional delegation. This is two important resolutions that I know it's a heavy lift, but we need to press forward right now while we have a White House that will listen to us, and that's why we're here today. Co-Chairman Wharf, did you have something else? Oh,
Yeah.
Representative Davis, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is, this deals with Wyoming. Would we have more power going forward to Congress if we had the western states together on this? Has this been circulated to, Idaho, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico? I guess is my question. Are they, New Mexico is very active in the oil extraction currently, and where they're sitting, how we line with them, I guess is my question. I would think we would have a little more standing if we were a better group together instead of just one individual state.
Yeah, Representative Davis, and I think we may get a little of information on that, a little more color with a part of this with Savannah with LSO. She wrote the memo, and I think she can give us a little history on how that happened back in '75. And I won't steal her thunder on that, but it was Wyoming that brought that legislation back then, and benefited all the other states. And I think that it'll have to happen in Congress for them to bring, their colleagues from these western states on board. But that's just, conjecture at this time. I don't really have the answer to that. Those are good points, though, for sure. Thank you, Representative Davis. Go ahead, Representative Co-Chairman Wharf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would agree that's obviously the best avenue, but I would defer that to our congressional delegation. I'm sure they have a working relationship. They would know who they can work with in order to get this done. But the main purpose that I saw of us generating the two resolutions that we passed was to elevate that towards it's not a simple request, but that this is something that we think needs to be acted upon sooner rather than later. And I guess that's why I'm a little disappointed. I mentioned to Senator Brasso's representative here, Brad, I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't get anybody here, because this represents the tune of like $500,000, like almost $1 billion that we could be getting. And I do think now's the time we need to do it while we got a friendly administration. We got the majority in two chambers, albeit a slim majority. But that's it. I'm anxious to hear the feedback and response that we get from our congressional delegation. But I think this is one of those, I believe, sea-changing moments for the state of Wyoming. Like I said in testimony earlier, we had to show that we could crawl, then we had to show we could walk. We're trying now to show that we can run, and I think there's a lot of things the federal government did for our state in its infancy, but I think it's time for our state to stand up and demand that we be treated like a sovereign state, just like the others inside the union. So that's kind of what I'm hoping is a result from this. But I'll yield back my time, but I do think that's a valid point, Representative Davis, that we do need a body back there in order to get it done. We got 1 in the House and 2 in the Senate, so it's going to take more than Wyoming to get this done.
Thank you, Representative Wharf. Go ahead, Representative Davis.
Mr. Chairman, which are we talking about, the House Joint Resolution number 2? Are we taking these separately or together? I guess it'd be my question in our discussion here.
I think that they sort of dovetail together. That's something we can discuss here after testimony today and get some input from our congressional folks on, whether, they were ran as 2 separate resolutions in Wyoming legislature. And I think it's probably best, at least initially, that they're run separately in Washington as well, just because there's one of them might be a little more palatable than the other one as far as how many people we get sympathetic to the two issues back in Washington. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but that's kind of the way I see it. Is we discuss them sort of together here today, but treat them separately as separate separate bills that would be run in Congress. Yeah. Okay, committee, anything else? All right, I guess we have the gentleman from Senator Barrasso's office here in person. Give him, oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to recognize Representative Schmidt. He's, this is his, I think this is your district here, isn't it? And he's in attendance today, so we appreciate you taking time out today, Mike, and always good to see you. Wish you were running again. Yeah, like I told you earlier. All right. Well, Mr. Bunning with Senator Barrasso, would you like to come up and go ahead and be the first to discuss these two resolutions? Yeah, right there's perfect. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I was not planning on making any commentary, but I came all the way from DC at Senator Barrasso's request. So I will keep it fairly brief, but he wanted me to be here to make sure you know how seriously we are taking this and how carefully we have looked at it. I am his chief of staff. I have been with him since he started in the United States Senate. I began with Senator Craig Thomas in 2001, and I'm born and raised in Rock Springs. So I am a local kid through and through, and John wanted me to be sure to be here to let you know that we are paying attention, and these are issues that are discussed, and we understand the importance of them to the state of Wyoming. Obviously, the primacy issue is a big one because the state of Wyoming does a much better job of moving projects forward in a thoughtful, timely manner than the federal government does. And then obviously the royalty issue is a big one too. That's an awful lot of money that is on the table, but that side of it is what makes this difficult in Washington too, because all of a sudden you would be shifting, to your point, around $1 billion out of federal coffers to Wyoming, which is great for Wyoming, but when you're looking at appropriations committees and funding priorities elsewhere in Washington, even in some cases where you think you may have allies in these things, they look and say, wait a minute, that money's got to come out of a program that's important to me in order to go to Wyoming. And so, these are conversations we are having. I think there will be folks that will oppose this tooth and nail no matter what we do. I think that was evident in the Biden administration, who kind of went out of their way to do everything they could to make sure that we did anything but use our public lands in a multiple use capacity. And we do have great partners with the Department of Interior and the Trump administration. They are open to new ideas. They are receptive to new ideas. They've got a lot on their plate at the moment, but that's, they had a lot to undo from the last administration. So they're focused on that. We've got their ear, and the delegation works really well together, and we're all on the same page as far as that goes. It's just a question of how much time and effort do we put toward an initiative if, the outcome isn't certain, or if it's certain in the way that we wanted to go. I think if I were to guess, and this is just me speaking, not Senator Barrasso, if we were to introduce both of these bills tomorrow, we would get zero traction whatsoever. I just don't. I think it would raise some eyebrows. I think it would start a conversation, but in terms of proceeding through the legislative process with everything else that's on the table and a midterm election coming up, our legislative working days are waning very, very quickly. So in my opinion, I think, at least initially, rather than throwing these bills out there to then have outside interest groups throw cold water on immediately, I think it's better to keep continuing the discussions amongst the delegation and with you all and with Interior and others to see if there is a more sustainable path forward as we look to the future. Morning, Dan.
Yeah, Representative Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bunning, I had just kind of a general question when you talk about these maybe not being popular because of the climate that's going on right now, moving them forward. What would the senator and your office, his office, and you think is a kind of a priority with federal lands right now? What are some things that are getting close to the end or moving to the top, and you're seeing some success on other federal land use issues? Or
Yeah, sure. Well, they've repealed the public lands rule, which was a big one. There's been a lot of good executive action that's happened in that space. The difficulty is gaining traction to actually pass legislation right now. Last summer, there was the big kerfuffle over public land sales. And unfortunately, that continues to cloud progress before the Senate Energy Committee. When you start delving into public lands issues, everyone, the catchphrase is public lands in public hands. And, that's fine. But I mean, public land transfers are inherently good in certain instances when the state and local communities and local stakeholders have a say in it. I mean, we're sitting here in Pinedale, and correct me if I'm wrong, but without a public land transfer, they don't have a landfill or a golf course in Pinedale. So it's not, I think the notion that we were going to blindly sell off public lands last summer, it was kind of a disingenuous argument. That was never something that the Wyoming delegation would ever consider under any circumstance. These things take some years, sometimes decades to get agreement on, but that kind of debate really slowed down legislative progress with respect to virtually all public lands policy, at least within kind of the Senate and House committee section. There's a lot of good executive actions that are going on, and there are a lot of agency actions that are happening that are useful. And like I said, we do have a very friendly, receptive group out there. And it's just the legislative side of this is very difficult. So if you're going to codify these things, you need willing partners, and you need the time on the legislative calendar to do so. And right now I don't see how that happens, at least in the short term.
Hello, Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for being patient with my tardiness.
No, you're all good.
I was listening to our good friend Brad as I was driving in on my radio in my car. So just to make, Mr. Chairman, it's not so much a question as a statement. And for Senator Brassel's office, we've got a piece of legislation coming up as House HR 184. And we're actually sending someone from what's called the Grays River Collaborative, where we're looking at doing some small select timber cuts in the Kemmer District and the Grays River District. He'll be back there to testify in front of the House Committee on Natural Resources about our forestry projects, and just making you aware, Brad and the Senator and your office, and that we have this going on. And he will be back there. I believe it's the 17th and 18th, I think, but it's HR 184. Just to let you know, we're trying some things, we're working on some things, and any ground support you can give us out of your office, which you've always done, thank you so much, on this and other projects, just making you aware, sir. Not so much a question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Co-Chairman Wharf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Bunning, I certainly appreciate you coming out here and visiting with us. I guess I want to make it clear. I mean, I don't think any of the legislature expected, our delegation to go out and burn anything down, especially the capital that they themselves have built for us. But I do think, as you mentioned, this is a heavy lift. This is not something that's going to be done easily. But I look at it and I think, you know, do you expect the other states are going to ever bring this to the surface? Because I don't. And I think the only way this is ever going to happen is we're going to have to start demanding that we are treated like every other state that came into the union. You know, and I agree with you, what we saw happen with the efforts of Senator Lee from Utah. Definitely, that's what happens when your ducks aren't in a row. I mean, he definitely saw an opportunity and jumped on it. And it has set us back, I believe, quite a bit. But the same elements that are going to be against that are going to be against this. And I guess the one thing I'm happy to hear that we got your attention and that you're looking at this, but I think we need to do more than look. And I guess that's why we push so hard to get our legislature to sign those resolutions to our delegation. Not that we expect you to go do it. We want it to be successful. We want to know how we can help them achieve the same goal. But to me, this is about sovereignty. This is all about federalism. Those are the things to me that I wish we talked more about in DC. I think we've kind of lost sight of what we should be doing. And that's more or less what we were trying to do is we're trying to turn the Titanic. We're trying to put, you know, some of the emphasis back on states' rights. And, you know, we were all supposed to come into this union on the same footing. The equal footing doctrine spells that out pretty clearly. And I don't think very many of the other states share their mineral resources as much as Wyoming does. And I get it. There's a lot of money at stake, and it's going to be coming from somebody. There isn't a dollar that isn't spent. They probably spend it 10 times over in DC based on our budget. But I do think, and I'm glad to hear that they are thinking about it, that they're working on it. And, you know, I do hope, our biggest hope, I believe, is that we can maintain things. This is going to be a tough election cycle, a lot of problems with this administration, a lot of ups and downs. Never know what today's going to bring. But, you know, I'm glad to hear that you are looking at it, that you're talking. And I guess that's the one thing we want to do is, as a committee, we wanted to make our delegation aware of the fact that that's a priority we would like to see. And if there's anything we can do to kind of help feather this along, I understand we got to go a little bit tactical, but I do believe if we don't ever start looking for a plan to move forward, it's going to be falling on deaf ears again. And that's what we can't. I think we got an opportunity we got to take advantage of now. But I'm willing to say, you know, I trust our delegation to know the climate back in DC and know whether or not it's appropriate to do anything now. But I would like to at least get, I think I could speak for the committee. We'd like to get feedback, let us know, you know, how we can help, if it's building coalitions, whatever we need to be doing. I think this committee is willing to do whatever we can do to help push this along. And I think, as Representative Davis pointed out, you know, maybe we should be talking with some of our colleagues in some of the Western states that are in a similar situation where, you know, they're still being, to me, treated, we're kind of almost like we're not a full state. It's almost like we're a territory of the United States because the federal government has so much control over our lands and over our, I mean, one of the reasons why we want to have the opportunity to do the leasing is look at how long the government was shut down this last time. I mean, the longest they've ever been shut down. And that really puts our state in peril. You know, the biggest industry we have right now is our oil and gas development and extraction of those mineral resources. And so it is detrimental, and I'm sure you understand that, but I want you to convey that back with Senator Brasso and let him know. We appreciate you being able to attend here, but that's more my comments. I guess I'm going to ask you, when do you think is the best time to start working on this, knowing that it is such a heavy lift?
You know, I think you mentioned feedback. I think one thing that would be helpful and one thing that I would commit to doing when I get back is kind of circle the delegation together and have them revisit both of these directly with Interior and kind of some of the agencies and get their direct thoughts once again. Initially, their hands were so full that it was just kind of a viewed as sort of a pie in the sky. If we can get to that, we can get there. But maybe if it would be helpful to you, we could convene those folks, get some direct feedback from agencies if possible, and then have our staff circle back with you all and just kind of give you a better lay of the land. I don't want to speculate on, August 14th is the best day to get go. I really don't know. I really don't know. But I understand your need for that information, and we want to be helpful providing it. And I think, whether it's good news or bad news, you need to know. It's the uncertainty that kills virtually every discussion in every industry. And to your point, the extraction industry is our cash cow, and it makes everything else we do in this state possible. So we obviously want to take every step that we can to make sure that flourishes. But we don't want to be running in a direction that ends at the edge of a cliff as opposed to, at the finish line where we want to go. So I'm happy to circle back with the rest of the delegation and have them, reach out, and then we can plan some additional discussions here in the coming weeks and months, if that's okay with you.
Mr. Chairman, that would be great.
Okay.
If you could do that.
Yeah, and one more thing, circling back to my comments about the public lands, I do not want to throw Chairman Lee under the bus. He's within every right to propose that, and the process by which that was proposed was budget reconciliation, which is what we're currently going through, and there are strange rules that have to pass the parliamentarian smell test for that. And, the public lands issue is absolutely massive in Utah in terms of, being able to build housing for families and do other things. It's been a priority of his forever. And he was well within his rights to do that. And I think it did spark a good debate. It was just, the problem was when you proposed the initial language to the parliamentarian just to see if it would pass the smell test, you basically have to keep it as basic as possible. Well, someone got a hold of that language, sent it out, attached maps to it, and we were getting emails with, a McDonald's built at the top of the Bighorn Mountains and all of the nonsense, these things that were never going to happen, but it instantly stoked a fire. And, I know that remains a priority of Chairman Lee, as Senator Barrasso was formerly ranking member of the committee, and it works and generally defers to the chairman on all things and wants to work with them in his role as the majority whip. But I did not want anyone leaving here thinking that we were working against Chairman Lee. We in fact, we tried to work with him to improve that as best as we could, but the writing really kind of was on the wall that reconciliation wasn't the right vehicle for that, and that was not the right proposal to move forward. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that wasn't a criticism. I didn't mean it as a criticism of his.
Sure.
I know it's a big issue, and I know that he is honestly trying to figure out a problem or a solution to a problem they face in Utah. I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk to his chief of staff and see if his chief of staff would mind if we had his contact information as well. And maybe we can visit with him a little bit and see how we can coordinate with some of our western states, as Representative Davis suggested.
I would be happy to reach out and ask.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to this joint resolution, because we reduced the percentages in the one big beautiful bill and those things were to spur activity, correct?
Correct.
And so thus Wyoming would have saw a reduction of $600,000 or 600 million, no, whatever it was, $600,000 in our revenue back from the feds to the state. So with the shortfall of the revenue, I think is the reason why this bill went forth to the 87. Now, if we weren't spurring development, would this resolution, I guess is my question to the board here, is this resolution even applicable other than wanting to receive a larger percentage of the funds coming back to Wyoming? I guess, are you following me at all?
A little.
Because of the reduction in the percentages to spur development, we foresee a $600,000 shortfall in revenue, but we don't see if we spur the revenue or spur development, will we see more revenue? I guess I'm trying to figure out where the trade-off is in there.
Well, if I'm understanding correctly, I mean, yes, there was a reduction in state revenues due to the efforts in the One Big Beautiful Bill to spur coal and gas production. You know, whether or I think it's a question, it's a longer term question as to whether that development really is increased and that those revenues then kind of catch back up due to the increased production, what was lost over the cut. So I think that's a time will, in my opinion, I think that's a time will tell answer. It's not, you know, just because you make that cut initially, it doesn't mean that magically overnight production triples, doubles, quadruples, and you make up for that shortfall. I think it's in combination with some of the other efforts in Washington to increase production and repeal things like the public lands rule and create more opportunity and truly use public lands for multiple use. Our hope is over the long term that absolutely those revenues will be replaced. Does that make sense? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's my point here. You know, we, you know, on the dollar side, see the shortage in revenue coming back to the state where we have to run a balanced budget and everything is dependent upon that. But that is what we see dollar-wise with these reductions. But with these incentives or reduced in royalties to spur activity, what do we foresee? Or is there a forecast of dollars there that would possibly make up for the loss of the 600,000? That's my question.
Gotcha.
What's your thought? What do
You know, and this is just kind of thinking out loud, and no, I do not have a forecast of numbers for that. I am just.
You didn't bring your crystal ball?
I didn't, and my crystal ball seems to have been broken for the last decade or so because everything I seem to predict goes up in flames. But you know, I think ideally the long-term notion was this will preserve current activity, particularly in the coal industry that was fading so very quickly, spur additional development and expansion of those industries, which over the long haul would in turn bring in more revenue. But I mean, these things take time, and I wouldn't begin to guess when that would happen. And a lot of it depends on market conditions and global geopolitical tensions play a big factor in a lot of these things, as we all see. So I wouldn't venture a guess when that would happen, but I think that was the ultimate goal, that we thought industry could really expand and have the freedom to expand, which is something they felt like they haven't had in quite some time. It was more hang on for dear life rather than how do we invest for the future. So we'll have to see how that all plays out.
Mitty. Thank you, Mr. Bunning. I got a couple of things to finish up with. Since you're the guy here, we'll kind of get all of our vetting out here. You know, Co-Chairman Worf mentioned we're almost a territory still. We literally are in territorial bondage on 47% of our state. I mean, we came in, our act of admission, equal footing with the original 13 states. The property clause of the U.S. Constitution essentially has a mandate to dispose eventually. It's not a discretionary word. It's shall dispose. And we're not talking about a full transfer right now, but 47% of our surface and 69% of our minerals are still in territorial bondage effectively. And that needs to change. I mean, and what we really need is Congress to make this a priority. From here, I know everybody's busy, and I understand the mess that you guys have to deal with back there, especially on election year. But there's read a little history. There's a congressman from Missouri spent his whole Senate career trying to do what Wyoming's trying to do. His whole passion was to get all of those federal lands transferred to, state sovereignty and jurisdiction in Missouri. So whether it can be done or not, it needs to be a priority. I mean, we're half of a state. We're really half of a state if you look at our mineral estate being controlled by Washington. And I think at any given time, we have 30 to 50 lawsuits, natural resource lawsuits, Wyoming fighting our so-called, federal partners. I mean, we're not really partners. We just sue each other all of the time. And that needs to change. And we need Congress, our delegation, to make this a priority. We would really like to see that respectfully, to try to do something instead of just talk about it. I know it's hard, and the whole thing with Utah last year kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit on the narrative. Like you said, nothing against what Mike Lee was trying to do. It kind of got all taken out of context too, that it was going to be this mass sell-off. It had nothing to do with that. But anyway, we really appreciate you being here today, and coming from Washington and showing up here in person means a lot, and we thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And like I said, I will share this message with the delegation when I get back, and you know how to get in touch with me if I can be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. LSO, we got another speaker online, or is there anybody?
Mr. Chairman, a representative from Senator Lummis's office is online. However, she's not planning on providing any testimony. She's just listening.
Okay. That's it. If I could just say one more thing, Mr. Bunning, that I wanted to say, you probably don't need to come up, or maybe should. I wanted to ask you one last question since we don't have any other buddy. Thank you, sir. One note I wrote down, our congressional delegation, went through this same motion on our royalty share back in 1975. And like I commented earlier, what's different now than in 1975? That was a big environmental movement back there. That's how we ended up with FLPMA and multiple use on federal lands, trying to, get some clarity to how to deal with a lot of the federal lands. What is different about the political climate now when they accomplished the 37.5% to 50% royalty increase than today?
Well, I'm not going to try to make anybody feel old, but I wasn't alive in 1975. Even in my time since 2001, it is a 100% different political environment. Part of it is it's no longer, sit down, read through statements, study. It's who can condense their message into a tweet or a TikTok or, something. And then you've got the 24-hour news cycle that never ends. I think Senator Barrasso often holds up his cell phone in meetings and says, this is one of the biggest barriers to, you know, bipartisanship and progress at times. Sure, it's great to have all of that information at the palm of your hand, but the problem is a lot of times it's the last person who called or the last Instagram that you see that forms your opinion, because people really don't take the time to learn things in and out. It's sound bites, it's, you know, arguing, and it's not who has the better opinion or the better position anymore. It feels to me, even since 2001, it's who screams the loudest. And it's a difficult place to sit down and have honest, earnest conversations. I mean, the senators will often go into senator-only lunches, member lunches. And, you know, they're closed door. There's supposed to be a place of candor and conversation and honesty. And, you know, we have it with chiefs of staff as well. We have a chief of staff luncheon, and it's closed door. It's a family situation. You're supposed to be able to talk. And 9 times out of the 10, by the time I get out of lunch, 2/3 of what we talked about in that room has already been shared with the press. It's being thrown around, and it's, you know, it's very difficult. I think there is with certain folks, they just don't trust one another as much as they should. And I think technology, as great as it is, has contributed to that level of distrust, because you don't know who's recording what, if they're filming you or taking a photo. And like I said, I think there aren't so many smoky backroom deals anymore, because the smoky back rooms are full of cameras and folks that are in there, and they just don't get comfortable enough to really trust each other. And again, I'm not speaking for all senators, or actually any senators or any reps. That's just what I viewed, even at the staff level. You know, when I first started covering policy for Craig Thomas, it was telecommunications. And that wasn't a red versus blue issue. That was a urban versus rural issue. And we had incredible partners in Senator Dorgan, Democrat, you know, out west. It didn't matter. It was urban versus rural. It was those commonalities that people focused on, as opposed to red or blue. And now I think the extremes on both sides have taken it pretty far, and it makes it very, very difficult to come to consensus. Because in the last few years, it feels like if you've come too close to the middle, well, then you're no longer part of, you know, the purity of one side or the other. And I don't think it's helpful. I don't know what the answer to that is at the moment. But that's, again, wasn't alive in 1975, but I'm pretty sure they weren't blowing each other up over a Twitter or a tweet or an Instagram post. So.
Well, thank you for that. And one last question. Since you're the last one to testify, I was going to maybe ask a few of the others, but when can we expect a draft bill for us to review, and expect our congressional delegation to run that through the gauntlet back in Washington? Because, you know, we have these committee meetings, everybody talks, you know, circular, and then nothing happens. And just saying, hey, you know, the political climate's not there today. You know, we're not willing to try. We want you guys to try. What can we expect from you guys on some legislation?
Sure. Well, again, I'm not the legislation expert necessarily, but as I committed to you earlier, happy to get with the rest of the delegation and have them circle back with you all very shortly in terms of what initial feedback that they're getting on the general idea from Interior and others in the administration, as well as from their colleagues on both sides of the Hill. And then I think from that conversation, which hopefully can happen in the next 1 to 2 weeks, if that's okay with you all, then they can give you a better idea of what a realistic time frame would be for actually putting pen to paper and drafting something, if that's something that
would be great.
Would be worthwhile. But the other thing we don't want to do is if these ideas are non-starters with the administration, I personally wouldn't be comfortable putting the Trump administration in a really difficult position where they have to come out full-throated against something that the state of Wyoming wants. I'm not saying that's where they would ultimately end up on this, but that's one of the things that we think about when we think about proposing legislation is, you know, is this truly a dead end? And if it's a dead end with the folks that we 100% need to work with to make it happen, should we go that road?
Right.
go down that road.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm happy to get the delegation together, have discussions about what the possibilities are, both near term and maybe medium term, and go from there.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? Really
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Yep. Okay, I guess we've got all of our congressional delegation online. Nobody else is testifying. Comments from the gallery. Representative Schmidt, come on up and bring us a cup of coffee.
I think I'm on here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's right.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say I've got another meeting in town here at 10:30, so I'm going to try to be brief, but just want to say, I'm sure you all know how important the oil and gas industry is to this district with the Jonah Field and the Anacline, and drive anywhere in this district, you can see the results of that. So it's very important for us here. So I fully support these resolutions. And saying that, I understand where Representative Davis is coming from, because we do have power in numbers, as we know with anything we do. But in this case, somebody has to lead. And I think Wyoming needs to lead. I think we need to take the step forward, start pushing these resolutions, keep the pressure on our federal delegation. That's what they're there for. They're supposed to be representing us back in Washington, D.C. One of the things with government is we can always find reasons to slow down and maybe wait a while, but I don't think we need to wait a while on this. I think we need to take the lead and move forward, all the while working with our other Rocky Mountain states to get on board with us and push this agenda forward. As you all know, we're in an election year here too. So this committee could change in a matter of a few months, less than a year. And then where are we at? We're going to be behind the 8 ball again. So I think we push forward with this. I think Wyoming takes the lead. We step forward strongly. We keep the pressure on our federal delegation. These are Wyoming's resources. And I believe that we deserve a bigger piece of that pie. So I appreciate everything you're doing. And I would just encourage you to continue to keep the pressure on our federal group. Thank you.
Any questions for Representative Schmidt? Representative Schmidt, thank you for being here, and thank you for those comments. And I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, we're the tip of the spear here. We need to lead on this and not let it get swept under the rug, because it is our state. Inside the borders, we should have sovereignty and jurisdiction entirely, like the original 13 states, just like our Act of Admission says, equal footing, property clause of the U.S. Constitution. So thank you for your comments, and they're well taken. Go ahead, Representative Orr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask a question. Do you believe that the climate's going to get any easier to get this done if we wait, or is it going to be the same fight regardless whether we do it now or we wait, do it 10 years down the road?
Well, I don't know that history tells us that waiting is any benefit for us. I really don't. And I think we have an administration, I think Chairman Ide mentioned this, that we have a federal administration right now that's friendly. And I think we need to take advantage of that. And I think the harder we push and the louder voice we have, the further we're going to get, the quicker we're going to get there. So that's what I believe.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before our colleague leaves the table, if you give a nutshell summary of how you think things are going in Sublette and South Lincoln in terms of the energy industry, just your thoughts on it, because you live here.
Right. And thank you, Representative Senator Dockstader, for that. It's rather slow here right now with everything that's going on in the world. It's got our natural gas prices in the tank, and service companies like mine have been doing this for over 40 years. The industry is rather slow right now. It's active. I mean, active as far as the production side, but when it comes to service work and maintenance and things like that, it's tampered down a little bit right now. But overall, the biggest threat we have year after year is the federal regulations that we have on any kind of new field drilling or discoveries. And I mean, we just don't have the activity here that we had 15, 20, 30 years ago. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We find more and more reasons all the time to create more and more regulation to slow our industries down rather than build those up. The industries that really created this state or helped create the state and get us in the position we're in. From a federal side, we're getting more and more regulation that just makes it more and more difficult for us to get anything done and to continue to produce the known resources we have here. As a service provider to the industry, I mean, it's gotten so bad that nobody wants to do this work anymore. There's no future in it. We can't get a year's worth of work in. We get 3, 4, 5 months of steady work. When the industry is good, when the commodity prices are up, we get 4 or 5 months of steady work and it's pretty much over because all the winter restrictions and the federal restrictions and wildlife restrictions start kicking in, and it just tamps the industry down. So there's no future in it for people anymore. There's no career building. So we're constantly in turnover mode. We're constantly in a hiring mode, and those people are becoming less and less available because they're realizing that it's better to take a job at Walmart than it is in the oil and gas industry. It's a steady paycheck. So anything we can do to get more control over that as a state is going to benefit this state as a whole and every citizen in the state, in my opinion.
Yeah, Representative Smith, just to hit on what you said there 15 years ago, I've got the stats here. 2008, our share of federal mineral royalties was about $1 billion. That was our 50%, and we pay a 2% fee for administration, so effectively we only get 48%. 2024, I don't have the updated 2025, but I know it's less. I've seen it. I can't give you that number, but 2024, our share was $588 million. So, 2026 might look pretty good just for the run up in prices of oil and gas with what's going on with in the Middle East and driving everything up right now as far as the price of oil goes. But yeah, it's not a number that looks good, and a lot of that I think has been confirmation on over-regulation, shutting down our mineral leasing. We can't sustain ourselves here at this pace here with what's going on. We need to act. So thanks for your testimony today.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? All right.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you,
rest
sir.
of your meeting.
Yeah. All right, committee, I guess we'll move on here. We're kind of on schedule. Number 3 on our agenda today is history of the state share of federal mineral royalties. And I hope everybody with our federal delegation could stay online and not run off, because this is pretty important. As Ms. Savannah Collins has wrote a memo, and we'll have her. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Come on up. I'm sorry I jumped ahead. I didn't know there was any other public comment. Sure.
Am I on? Okay. Should I
Go
tell you who I am?
Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm from Wyoming, and
pardon
right here in Boulder.
Okay.
And I guess it's a long and winding story, but I have a degree in geology, started my professional career here as a geologist. Then I went to law school at the university, all in the University of Wyoming. Super proud of that because I've been all over the world representing Wyoming. I was at Interior for 27 years. I was in the solicitor's office, which, as you may know, most of the folks that deal with Interior know, that's the general counsel's office for the Secretary of the Interior. And I ended up in DC, eventually was in an SES position in Salt Lake City, Utah, over the Intermountain States. Then I was appointed an administrative law judge by President Trump. And I served in that capacity for Department of Interior for 3 years. And then for a lot of reasons, personal and professional, I joined the Foreign Service. My intention in joining the Foreign Service, and I was clear about this with the folks, the Foreign Service that hired me, was to go overseas to encourage more U.S. overseas bilateral critical mineral development. Okay, so I have had a whole career in natural resources and mineral development. I didn't come here to give you my, and then I came home because the Trump administration decided Foreign Service was going to look much different. And I have a son who is in high school, and we've had this house in Boulder for a long while, and he just asked if he could please finish high school in Pinedale. Just simple, basic, very good school, excellent. So I returned to the United States in July of 2025 after serving in Kazakhstan, Central Asia, as a Foreign Service officer. As a career natural resource specialist, I was interested in this topic because, and then particularly after hearing Chief of Staff Bunning's conversation, there are a couple things I think I might want you to understand from a career civil service perspective. And one is how the civil service interprets the equal footing doctrine. The equal footing doctrine was a principle that allowed any new state that wanted to enter the union to negotiate their status. And once you negotiate that status, whatever that negotiation is, you are then on equal footing with everyone else. You probably already know that there are several states in the union, in the western part of the union, that negotiated a very good deal when they entered the union, like Utah, right? They got a lot more school section. Wyoming came in with basically the minimum package. So I understand your frustration, but I think there's a slight misunderstanding from the civil service perspective and your perspective how that equal footing doctrine is interpreted. And it's going to be important to know that going forward, because after listening to this, I have a proposal for you. And I think perhaps Chief of Staff Bunning might want to, and all of the representatives that are here, I guess there's just one other on the phone. I actually came to present remarks for the federal group, because there's nothing you can do about some of these problems. And that is, there are two ways to get more mineral royalty from the federal government. You can do what you're proposing to do in these joint resolutions, which is increase your royalty share. Fine. I think that's a pretty big lift, because every other Western state with oil and gas resources is going to ask for the same thing, and that's going to hit the federal coffers. I mean, can you think of the coastal states asking for that? I mean, it's just going to be, that's a tremendous lift. Okay, that's one way. The other way is produce more. And the biggest impediment that I see to your production, and I am not, I have been a generalist, so Wyoming has not been my focus, even though I started my career here and am proud to represent the University of Wyoming all over. NEPA, you are in litigation with the federal government all the time. I mean, I know that for a fact. And as a retired civil service, I'm here in my retired capacity. I could never have done this as a career civil service member, but as a retired member of the civil service, I'm here to tell you that it's NEPA that is going to be the slowest step in the process until that's resolved. The Trump administration gutted, I think through executive order, took the NEPA regs off the books. And I have, now that I'm back, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with myself because I have retired from the federal government. A couple of options have presented themselves, and I'm trying to figure out, because I was overseas when all of this big stuff happened, what is the status of NEPA? That is a huge problem for you guys, because without federal NEPA, every single agency is preparing its own NEPA policy directions. And you're going to be tied up in all sorts of NEPA litigation, and you're not going, so there's two different ways to get more revenue. One is what you're proposing, the other is more production. You're not going to get that second step either unless you can encourage the federal government to fix that NEPA program. That's what I think is your biggest impediment. You can work on this other proposal, as long as you want to. And that was interesting that there was a senator from Missouri who spent his career doing it and didn't, I assume he wasn't successful. But there is a success story that you might want to take a note and consider talking with the federal delegation about. And I don't know if anybody's heard of the Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act. There's a couple of them now. Have you heard of this?
Mhm.
Okay, this might be your ticket to more control over certain federal lands. Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act, because of the majority of lands in Nevada were managed by the federal government. Congress, back in the bipartisan days, and I think this was like early 2000s or late 90s, passed a law that made certain public lands in Nevada right around Las Vegas, because there were public lands on the Las Vegas Strip, gave certain extra authorities and changed the FLTMA policy direction for those public lands, specifically to encourage development and growth in the Las Vegas area. These have been very, very successful. You might have the opportunity to consider where in Wyoming certain public lands ought to be managed very specifically, setting aside the royalty issue, because you want a global solution to that. And I leave that to your best efforts, from your lips to God's ears, right? But you can maybe use the Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act, and there are a few others that followed that. That was bipartisan. That was very, very successful, generated a lot of money for Nevada, a lot of money for Nevada. The Raiders are in Nevada thanks to that act. So my suggestion, and I'm coming to you with years and years and years of public land management under my belt, and I understand why I permitted the Jonah field. I was the solicitor for that particular, in the Anna Klein. I was the solicitor who said, defend the decision, BLM, that you're going to extirpate sage grouse here. And we did a really good job defending that. And sage grouse still, anyway, you all know the sage grouse situation. But I think that was a good model and represented some really fine state, federal cooperation when those fields were permitted. And perhaps the solution to your problem might be thinking a little creatively about other options. So that's my testimony.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I don't have any, other than I want to read you the negotiation we did in 1890, where it says, whereas said convention of the people of said territory have asked the admission of said territory into the Union of States on an equal footing with the original 13, with the original states in all respects, whatever. So I think we did a pretty good negotiation there, and you can't deny our active admission. So thank you for your testimony today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Did we catch a name?
Name.
Oh, yeah, I signed up, but I didn't tell you, I don't think. Veronica Larvey. Yeah, I signed myself in. So. L-A-R, V as in Victor, I-E.
Okay, committee, any other public comment? All right, we'll go on to item 3 that we tried to a little while ago, but glad you chimed in today. Appreciate that. So we're back at number 3, history of the state share of federal mineral royalties. And Savannah Collins from LSO she's written a nice memo for us here to give us a little background, and we'll let her introduce that for us here this morning. Go ahead, Savannah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Savannah Collins, LSO Legislative Attorney. This is my first time presenting, so please go gentle on me, but I will answer any of your hard questions. I am presenting the memorandum in your packet today on the history of the federal mineral royalty share provided to states under the Federal Mineral Leasing Act. This memorandum provides an overview of the current version of the Federal Mineral Leasing Act of 1920, outlines the federal land use policies on federal lands governing oil and gas extraction from 1920 to 1976, and reviews subsequent amendments to the royalty share percentage in the years that follow. And this memorandum was drafted at the chairman's request. To begin with, we'll look at the current Federal Mineral Leasing Act. When states entered into the Union, they were required to relinquish any claims to the right or title in unassigned public lands belonging to the federal government as a condition of statehood. The understanding was that the federal government would be holding these lands for the good of the people of the United States. Such an agreement can be found in Article 21, Section 26 of the Wyoming Constitution. These lands came to make up the federal lands in the United States today. Approximately 29,137,722 acres in the state of Wyoming are managed by the federal government today. Currently, there is a federal framework, the Federal Mineral Leasing Act of 1920, where private entities can lease federal land when developing oil and gas or mineral production, and a portion of the revenues from that leasing goes back to the state where the federal land is located. This portion is referred to as a federal mineral royalty share. All states currently receive 50%, except for Alaska, which receives 90%, with 2% of that 50% going to the federal government to administer this leasing program. Prior to 1920, before we had the Federal Mineral Leasing Act, the Federal Mineral Land Use Policy was based on the General Mining Act of 1872. After the Civil War and the economic depression that followed, the United States Congress wanted to create an opportunity to boost the economy and open up land in the West for development. Federal land was made available for exploration and purchased by speculators. At this time, there was little to no restraint under the General Mining Act, so an individual could lay claim to a piece of land with minerals and only had to meet very minimal requirements to maintain their claim to the land. This meant a large amount of federal land was tied up in prospecting claims with little to no production occurring on the land. There was also rampant claim jumping at this time, since those individuals usually weren't staying on the land. Considering the land was meant to be held for the benefit of the people of the United States, there wasn't a way to protect these lands and make them useful for the people at this time. Additionally, the states were not receiving a share of sales under the General Mining Act, which was a considerable detriment to the states where there was a large amount of federal land not making any money for the state. Skip forward, we have the Mineral Leasing Act of 1920. The Mineral Leasing Act of 1920 was enacted in response to the issue of claim jumping and holding on to federal lands without developing them. The Mineral Leasing Act authorized federal leasing of public lands for private extraction of oil, gas, coal, phosphate, sodium, and other minerals. Hard rock minerals such as gold and silver were not included in the covered minerals. Public lands owned by the federal government within the state can now be leased to private entities rather than an outright sale, and the private entity would then pay the federal government 12.5% of the amount or value of the production removed or sold from the lease. The federal government would then pay the state 37.5% of the 12% to the state where the lease was located. Moving 50 years into the future, the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, also known as FLPMA, which Chairman Ide mentioned a little bit earlier. FLPMA was created in 1976 to address disparate approaches to land use on federal lands. Congress was trying to balance the need for public resources such as oil and gas with the preservation of those resources for the future. At this point, there was not an organic act for the Bureau of Land Management stating what the primary function of the agency was. There were conflicting approaches to land management at this point that were causing tensions in the West, where mineral production and grazing were both high priorities. FLPMA was created to come up with an approach for these competing interests. FLIPMA was introduced in both chambers of Congress in 1975. In the Senate, Wyoming Senator and later Governor Clifford Hansen introduced an amendment to the Federal Mineral Leasing Act of 1920 during committee discussion to increase the percentage of mineral royalty shares from 37.5% to 60%. When he introduced the amendment, he credited Representative Tino Roncalio with the idea. Representative Tino Roncalio was also from Wyoming. Representative Roncalio's reasoning for the increase was that the additional 22.5% of revenues could be used for general public purposes by the state and local governments. As demand for mineral extraction was increasing, it became evident that the communities surrounding the extraction sites were bearing the brunt of the impacts. Colorado Representative James P. Johnson proposed to increase the federal mineral royalty share from 37.5% to 50% to take care of impact mitigation in the House version of the bill. The additional 12.5% was earmarked for planning, construction and maintenance of public facilities, and provision of public services. Following conference committee between the two chambers, they adopted the Senate version of the bill, but included the House percentage increase to 50% rather than the 60% increase suggested in the Senate, including those House earmarks for planning, construction, and maintenance of public facilities and provision of public services. The Senate version of the bill was ultimately signed into law as the Federal Land Policy and Management Act on October 21st, 1976. Since then, there have only been a few substantive changes to the federal mineral royalty share. In 2000, Congress added language to 30 USC 191, saying none of the payments should be reduced for administrative costs incurred by the federal government administering the leases. There had been no direct provision providing for administrative cost payments prior to 2000. In 2013, Congress added language saying that 2% of the payments to states should go to administrative costs incurred by the federal government. Since this amendment, states now receive 48% as their federal mineral royalty share rather than the 50% agreed to under FLIPMA. In 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act increased the federal oil and gas royalty rate that the producer had to pay from 12.5% to 16.67%. This rate increase was reversed under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in 2025 and is now at 12.5% again. The Consensus Revenue Estimating Group of Wyoming noted the changes in rates in their October 2025 report and estimated the impact in fiscal year 2026 on the federal mineral royalty rate on oil and gas to be $600,000 to $4 million in fiscal year 2030. And I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Committee. Questions? I have one for you,
Absolutely.
obviously. So on page 1 of your memo, you've got under that heading, Current Federal Mineral Leasing Act, it says when states entered into the union, they were required to relinquish any claims to the right or title in unassigned public lands belonging to the federal government as a condition of statehood. So I've studied this quite a bit in the past on just, the resolution we tried to pass a couple of years ago that Ms. Hansen helped me with. And there's a lot of experts out there that have mentored me, so to speak. But with that in your memo here, in our Wyoming Constitution, Article 21, Section 26, that's where and I get a lot of pushback on this in the legislature where we say, it says right there in Section 26, the people inhabiting this state do agree and declare they forever disclaim all right and title to the unappropriated public lands. And nobody ever finishes that sentence, basically. It says until the federal government disposes of it. And we didn't give up sovereignty and jurisdiction either. We gave up right and title, and there's multiple states. I'm asking maybe to follow up on this a little bit more. That same language is in a lot of states. That's those in their acts of admission or their acts of enabling acts that has the precise language that we have in our Constitution here, and they have less than 5% of their federal lands in their state. And if you could get kind of a list of those with that forever disclaim language, I've got a list somewhere, but I really haven't got the details on that to give a good argument. So it's everybody kind of falls back on that, but it's not basically like what you're saying in there, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was to clear title basically on everything that was unappropriated so we could come into statehood and we didn't have a bunch of so-called claim jumpers like you have written in your memo here in a different context. So that's what most states did, was to clear title for statehood, and then they ended up appropriating all of those former federal territorial lands. Is that correct? And could you follow up on that? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to look further into that to see what other states did in their act of admission. It's my understanding that in this particular section that you just quoted, that they did disclaim, as they said, all right and title to the unappropriated public lands within the boundaries of the territory of Wyoming at the time, and that until the title thereto, that's a couple of words after the fact, and that until the time thereto shall have been extinguished by the United States, the same shall be and remain subject to the disposition of the United States. And so that means, in normal human speak, that the title has been given to the United States and that it will stay with the United States, like you stated, until such a time as the United States decides to give it back. Perhaps there's a public land transfer, any number of legal methods to pass the land back and forth. But the language of disclaiming all right and title to those unappropriated lands did go to the United States government.
Right. Or they basically just held on to it as territorial lands effectively. And I think that the way I understand it is, they were territorial lands, and then once statehood happened, they quit referring to them as territorial lands and they called them public lands. It was just sort of a change of language there, but essentially there's still former territorial lands is what, 48% of our state is. And it would be helpful to know that language with other states that have less than 5%, public lands that have the verbatim language that we have in our act of admission. I think a lot of these states, they call them enabling acts. Ours was called an act of admission. And then our Constitution, reaffirms that in that section 26, but it does go on to say until, like the property clause of the U.S. Constitution, they dispose of those lands, and it was to clear title to come in for statehood. So yeah, it'd be nice to get a little more color on that, just so we can argue other states have the same language and they have literally no federal lands anymore. Yeah. Thank you, Savannah.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to look into that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Co-Chairman Wharf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Savannah, I wanted to comment on this. Just to me, this was very beneficial to review. I know, unlike Mr. Bunning, I was here in 1975. I wasn't exactly that old, but I do remember the Sagebrush Rebellion. I remember not really understanding that as a young man, but I know as I've gotten older and as I developed my career in wildlife management, I learned a lot about this very thing, about the establishment of the Federal Natural Resource, or the FLIPMA, that led to, the payments that we get in lieu of taxes. But one of the questions I was wondering, if it's appropriate to ask, you did such a good job on that. I would like perhaps to request, if it's the pleasure of this committee and if it's appropriate, I would like to have you look into the research, the last time public lands were transferred? Because I know there was 5 states. They're the last ones that the public lands were transferred. I'd like to kind of see the process, what they did, and maybe help, you know, if Mr. Bunning can also look at that. I think it's important for us to understand how the other states got it done. And I just think we just need to become a sovereign state and quit capitulating so much of the stuff that we should be doing as a state to the federal government. And the only way that's going to happen is if we demand it. And I guess that's what we're hoping, is that we can get enough support. And obviously, I don't want to see our delegation be the Lone Rangers out there fighting this battle. But I do want them to know that that is kind of what we're asking. We're asking that our delegation will actually start using some of that capital we've built. I know the President of the United States has mentioned several times that he loves Wyoming. I think he loves everything that's helped him, but I don't believe there's any other state that had the percentage of votes that went towards the president. I think we had the highest in the nation as a percentage. And I think all of that matters. And I think it's just a matter of, you know, us conveying that message that it is time for things to be looked at in a different light. So I guess that's something, if this committee feels comfortable asking Savannah to look at that history, last transfer of public lands, how that was brought about. Is there any opposition to that?
Co-Chairman Wharf, I would maybe add to that. I know a little bit about, you know, there's been some transfer done in Hawaii. And if you wouldn't mind adding on to that, I think the Crown of Canada has let that go too. They're no longer Crown lands. It would be nice to get a little color on maybe what happened in Canada with their provinces up there. I'm not sure how that happened specifically. I've seen little small articles and stuff, but I think the Crown basically gave it to the provinces up there. They didn't want to deal with it anymore.
Anything else I can do for you, Mr. Chairman?
Is everybody good with her doing a little research for us, just for educate the legislature when we can? Thank you very much. That was a very good memo.
Thank you.
All right, committee, we're ahead of schedule here. Anybody have any public comment on on Savannah's memo? Seeing none, nobody online. Okay. Well, this was the last issue we had before our lunch break. We're about an hour early here. Yeah, we can take a quick break here and we can maybe chat and see if we want to just go ahead and try to finish up today or early and everybody get a drink of water, go to the restroom, and we'll be back. How about and a donut? We'll go for that. How about 15-minute break? Okay, thank you. All right, committee, we'll gavel back in here after the long break. I think we're going to go ahead and try to finish things up and not have a lunch break today and get out of here on Friday afternoon. Everybody can get home a little earlier. So next on our agenda here for today is item number 5, Good Neighbor Authority Program. And we'll start off with the Wyoming State Forestry Division. Kelly, if you want to go ahead and come up and introduce yourself for everybody that doesn't know you or is online, and go ahead and tell us what you have. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Ide. Okay. So it's good morning, not good afternoon. We're in morning now. Chairman Ide, Co-Chairman Wharf, and members of the committee, my name is Kelly Norris. I'm the Wyoming State Forester. Wyoming State Forestry is utilizing every available tool to expand forest management and timber production across federal, state, and private lands. Through the Good Neighbor Authority Program, State Forestry leverages state capacity to increase active management on federal lands through state contracting. As a division of Office of State Trust Lands, State Forestry manages approximately 263,000 acres of state forest lands. We sold 4 million board feet of timber last year. State Forestry also provides technical forestry assistance to private landowners, developing forest management plans, laying out and prepping forest management activities at no cost to the private landowner. This service is made available from federal cooperative forestry assistance funds that are provided through Congress and distributed through the U.S. Forest Service. Wyoming State Forestry truly excels in the implementation of cross-boundary vegetation treatments. I have provided the committee with a G&A handout that shares the progress of Wyoming State Forestry Good Neighbor Authority Program. And that one, I believe, which one is it? I want to point out a few things on it, that's why. Let me get my things together. It's called the Wyoming Federal Lands Report here. Okay, so I'm going to cover a few things in this handout here. So currently, State Forestry has a partnership coordinator position, 3 permanent Good Neighbor Authority project foresters, and one of them is located in the Black Hills, one's located in the Medicine Bow, and the other is in the Bridger-Teton National Forest, and located here in Pinedale. We have 3 contract foresters located in the Bighorns, Black Hills, and Shoshone National Forests, and we have a shared grant specialist position. The Good Neighbor Authority Program is a proven tool to increase the pace and scale of forest management on federal lands. For example, last year, Wyoming State Forestry sold 28% of all the timber sold off of Wyoming's federal forests. This year, it will be State Forestry's biggest year for accomplishments to date. We are expected to sell 59% of all U.S. Forest Service timber volume in Wyoming, which is more than double from last year. That's significant. And it doesn't happen without a strong state-federal relationship that we've built at all levels. So from our foresters on the ground working closely together to our forest supervisors or our district rangers, working with our district foresters, as well as with the regional leadership or Wyoming BLM State Forester working with myself and our Assistant State Forester. We have been really focused on making significant efforts to meet these federal and state partnership relationships, really just to coordinate that project work on the ground together. So as you can see on the back side of your handout, there's some tables there. And State Forestry, what you're going to see there is we're contracting all different kinds of forest management activities. So it's timber sales to aspen enhancement projects, thinning and fuels reduction projects. Interestingly, we're also contracting NEPA surveys. And this is really focused on removing that barrier so we can help move that project quicker through that planning into implementation. So we're using federal funding to help get those surveys done ahead of time so we can get decisions made on the ground faster so we can move the work faster through the system. The Good Neighbor Authority allows state forestry agencies the ability to hold timber receipts. So since the inception of the program, we've collected over $2.2 million in revenue that will be used for future work to be completed on Wyoming's federal lands on the ground. And you see that on your table as well. Another handout I provided you is a handout that really focuses on a visit from the U.S. Forest Service Chief Schultz, Tom Schultz. So in March, the U.S. Forest Service Chief, Tom Schultz, visited Sundance, Wyoming, and the Bear Lodge Ranger District to tour the Fort Focus area. And this is a large-scale interagency project that was completed within an expedited timeline to accelerate forest health and fuels reduction while supporting the local timber industry and the workforce within that. So within 12 months, this large-scale landscape went from scoping to offering 3 large timber sale projects. And that's really due to the coordination and efforts from Wyoming State Forestry, Wyoming's Bear Lodge Ranger District, and the National Wild Turkey Federation. So State Forestry's Neon GNA timber sale was the first to sell, and it will treat over 1,300 acres within it. We're extremely grateful for Chief Schultz for taking the time to visit Wyoming and really learn about the efficiencies that were developed, important partnerships that were formed, and to acknowledge the leadership from those that were involved. In January, Governor Gordon signed a new shared stewardship agreement, and that's one of the handouts I provided you here. And that was with the U.S. Forest Service. So the newly updated agreement includes much of the same language as before. It's very similar language. The governor signed the first shared stewardship agreement with the Forest Service back in 2020, and it was with Secretary Perdue. This one is signed as an update with Chief Schultz. But in that, we did note that within that original language, there's still some recognition that we have 3 state agencies, and that's the Wyoming Department of Agriculture, Wyoming Game and Fish, and Office of State Lands, Wyoming State Forestry Division, who have Good Neighbor Authority master agreements with the U.S. Forest Service. The addendum to this agreement was added, and it really is the focus on how we're going to address how Wyoming and the U.S. Forest Service are going to agree to increase responsible forest management in Wyoming. So within that addendum, there's 2 key pilot landscape demonstration areas that were added. Within these landscapes, they were strategically selected to really prove how state capacity can help accelerate project implementation. One is in the Bighorn National Forest. It's in the southern area where the national forest lands abut to state, BLM, and private lands, and really holds an immense opportunity for cross-boundary project work. We're expecting within that, and the NEPA's been cleared on it. It's a very large-scale vegetation project. Within the next 5 years, we have really agreed to partner with the Forest Service and put out over 4 million board feet on over 1,600 acres within that project pilot program through our contracting system, through the GNA program. And really what that's going to do is provide a mix of timber, fuels work, as well as just really looking at the forest health work in that area. It is an important area that's connected into some state trust lands, connected into BLM lands, and some really great private lands that it's just going to be a larger landscape. And so it made a lot of sense for us to partner and pilot in that area, right above Dull Knife Reservoir and that whole area. The second pilot program area that we are going to work with the Forest Service on is in the Bridger-Teton National Forest in the Kemmer Ranger District. And the LaBarge project, it contains an estimated 17 million board feet of timber that can provide a real steady supply to the local industry over the next 5 to 7 years. State Forestry's contracting processes can really help develop those smaller timber contractors. And this area is to really focus on smaller sales. We're looking at like 5 to 10 acre size and sales, while adding additional timber projects and some larger ones around the Hams Fork in the future. So State Forestry is currently coordinating with Lincoln County to move our Lyman office to Kemmer, which will include an assistant district forester and a new G&A contract forester to help really kick off that pilot program and get that going and established yet this summer. So both those two pilot program landscapes are really built around multi-year pipelines of active forest management work, cross-boundary coordination, and it can be where the state can lead this implementation and can really help bolster the local timber industries and the workforce stability. Our objective with these two pilot program areas is to provide increased, consistent, and predictable timber projects for work while improving long-term forest health conditions in these areas. The Forest Service and State Forestry are working with the Forest Guild to host a field tour with representatives from local, state, and national agencies and governments to share more about the pilot program landscape here in the Kemmer Ranger District. We're finalizing dates. It looks like it might be likely July, end of July timeframe, and we will be sending an official invitation to this committee to attend, if you would like to attend that in the field and take a look at what these pilot programs, where we're going, how we're going to achieve them, how we're going to work together to get these projects done. So State Forestry was really able to commit to this important work thanks to the additional $4.9 million in federal funding from the Forest Service. So $2 million went directly to funding G&A staff salaries upon signing the shared stewardship agreement. So that was a big deal that Chief Schultz actually made sure of. Then additionally, $1.4 million was added to our Medicine Bow agreement for contractual work. We had an additional $250,000 added for project work in the Bighorns, $500,000 to the Bridger Teton, and $400,000 of contractual work for the Shoshone. So the Forest Service is truly investing into our Good Neighbor Authority program, and we're seeing, as we've seen the increase in timber offerings, we're going to continue to see, I think, that continue to increase in project work with those investments. This federal funding and forest health project work has really become an important leverage to the new forest health grant program that State Forestry has started to implement. Today is the last day we're accepting project applications to the new Forest Health Grant Program. And that's what the Wyoming Legislature provided, $3.5 million in state funding to start the program. We've already received 31 applications for over $12.2 million, but we're looking at leveraging about the equal of that, of about almost $12 million in leverage. So many of the proposed projects, there's quite a few projects, and we have yet till the end of today, are really adjacent to that G&A project work. It's really looking at how we can expand and target, but we've seen projects, I think, in over 15 counties and across Wyoming. And so again, G&A can really help be almost like that lightning bolt to start getting that work going. A little bit of investment here and there, the state coming in saying we want to help invest in our lands, and cross-boundary work is starting to really take off. So in closing, Wyoming's Good Neighbor Authority program is delivering results. It is effective, efficient, and in direct alignment with state and federal priorities. As Wyoming State Forester, I recognize how important it is for the Forest Service and Wyoming BLM to be successful in the work they do. Wyoming's federal lands hold valuable watersheds for our communities, forage for ranching, as well as wildlife habitat and recreational opportunities. Wyoming's communities benefit when our forests are healthy and productive. The Good Neighbor Authority program's growth and impacts are a result of many organizations, local communities and counties, and agencies, as well as successful collaboration of the executive and legislative branches committing to healthier forests and watersheds. The work this committee completed over the last year and then followed through during the legislative session is already making positive on-the-ground impacts to Wyoming's forests. And with that, I will open it up from here and see if the committee has any questions that you may have.
Committee,
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Dockstader,
we
go
could just
ahead.
have our forester repeat the amounts on those applications for,
Yes, they keep growing. Yesterday it was 28 applications and I just got a text that it was 31. Hold on here. I think it is, I want to make sure because we still have some time today. Okay, so the number of applications are 31. Total funding request is $12,265,312 so far. Total match provided was $11,455,270. Applications from 15 different counties.
thank you.
And what we were seeing is, we're seeing applications from conservation districts. We're seeing applications from cities, from fire districts, from counties. We're seeing applications from game and fish. It's a real wide variety. The Nature Conservancy, National Forest Foundation for some watershed work out of encampment, for example. So what we're going to do with that, these applications after tomorrow, we have formed a committee and of representation, pretty good representation, like DEQ with water. We have somebody from Game and Fish. We'll have a state forestry. We have a retired forest supervisor, Russ Bacon. We have a conservation district representative, and we're going to go through and rank them all and figure out what we can do in phases because we only have 3.5 million, and that is 3 times the ask. And then we'll probably need to have a discussion with the governor and maybe the legislature in the future of what we would like to see or do, because the projects that are coming look fabulous. They're exactly, I think, what we're wanting to see as an investment on the ground.
I'd like to follow up to that Senator Dockstader's question. He kind of hit on what I was curious about as well on the, those 31 applications, the appropriation from this state was 3.5 million. Could you, you mentioned conservation districts and various government agencies or non-government agencies. Is there a private sector mix in any of those applications? And could you maybe explain those projects, a little more to what everybody's applying for those dollars for? Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. That is a great question. I have not reviewed them all, and they're just coming in. I've just had our staff provide me a table with all the application names, what county they were, what the ask is, what the match is, and who applied. So many of them they have to be a government entity that was the way the statute and the program was set up. So we've, but then what we're seeing is sponsorship or support from like a project in Albany County probably has a letter from BOPU, like from the City of Cheyenne Water. And so we're seeing conservation districts support a project in the Bighorns that's a GNA project, right? That's gonna impact the Sheridan Municipal Watershed. So there's partnerships and combinations. There's maybe an applicant, and then there's multiple applicants a part of that larger scale project. We have seen, I think, for example, I believe the city of Rock Springs applied, for example. So we're seeing fire in forest and water issues all the way down into our communities. They're in our communities. We're thinking about that. We're thinking about many. This is the first time we've had an opportunity of a grant like this. So we weren't sure what kind of applications we were going to get, to be quite clear. But a lot of them, from what I'm gathering, have been working with our foresters, been working with the Forest Service or the BLM, working on these projects, and are seeing this as a way to really take a way to leverage some funding and apply it to make that project larger and greater and more impactful. And I believe even a fire district here in this community applied to one of them. I think they were one of our first applicants. So they're a wide range. What we could do for this committee, and I believe I will need to present the results of this program to the Ag Committee and Select Water, probably sometime this fall. We'll come up with a full report for you to kind of go through what the applications look like, where those projects were, the impacts and the leverage there.
Yeah, thank you. So primarily forest issues and fire issues. Why would this city of Rock Springs make an application? Just curious.
I haven't seen it yet, Chairman, but I have a hunch it's about fire. We actually had a pretty significant fire in the community of Green River in a park that had some pretty significant losses. And we actually have in many of our communities a high level of fuels and fuel loading that we have not been managing. And so there could be something as simple as just trying to get around that mitigation and some of that work.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Committee, more questions? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we lose our state forester, you mentioned NEPA. One of our public comments just mentioned NEPA. I just finished working with a forest on the west side of where I live in technically Idaho, but it's not, it's federal land, and trying to sort out cattle and bicycles, and NEPA came up. So what's the answer to streamlining NEPA and correcting it? I know it's at the federal level, but your thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Dockstader. I think that is a very good question. What we have found is when we have a solid forest plan and we have a project where we're bringing everybody together and at the planning level right away, we can come up with the right projects pretty quickly. There's some front loading, but beyond that, most of these projects should be pretty streamlined. What we have found though is there is categorical exclusions and they're there for a reason when they make sense. What we have found though is we get to a certain place on some of these forests where they're only doing categorical exclusions. And when we need some large landscape projects done, we need a balance. We need to be able to get forest level NEPA done. The Bighorns is a great example of that. They have NEPA planned out to over 2030. Like their aspen is for the whole forest. When they do aspen enhancement, when they're doing thinning projects, they have NEPA that's there in place. So what we have worked on, and we've had 2 pretty large scale meetings where we brought all the forests together with state forestry and talked about what NEPA was on the books, what NEPA was planned. And then we really had a great discussion about can we go bigger in some of these areas, do a whole district, right? If we're going to take the time to do NEPA and have that area covered versus doing small NEPA, and then filling in those gaps through those categorical exclusions are incredibly important too. There's avenues to do that. There's just a fine balance, right? There's some that need to go big, there's some that need to go small, but I do think the more we as cooperating agencies can help also move that through the process, we can also help in those areas, and that's where state forestry's come in and said, we'll take that revenue from that G&A project and we'll pay for those surveys to get done. We've done that in the Black Hills and on the Medicine Bow route where we're behind the 8-ball curve and we want to get that project done. So it's definitely the more we as state agencies can help be involved, conservation districts, counties, and understand where those barriers are, and then ask how can we unplug that barrier? Like what can we do as a group, because we don't have time, right? We have a forest that's unhealthy. What can we do to help move this faster through the process?
Thanks, Senator. Questions? I still have a few.
Okay.
Nobody else. I'll play off of Senator Dockstadter's first, and then I have a couple more. Uh, How can this committee or this legislature affect NEPA on a national level? Because that's always the big elephant in the room, it seems like. And, we hear of all of the streamlining and cutting red tape, and then you run into the roadblock with NEPA on a lot of issues, it seems like. That would be my first question. What can we do as a committee here to influence Congress like we're trying to with our, federal mineral leasing kind of a thing? Is there something that you could give us some direction on here at all?
Mr. Chairman, that is a great question. Has been some changes to NEPA. There's been some pretty big changes to NEPA. We have yet to see the impacts from those changes. They have pulled away quite a bit and made some significant changes when it comes to some of the way that NEPA is supposed to operate. But one of the things I think we in Wyoming should really be considering doing and thinking about, and I've talked to the County Commissioner Association a bit about this, is we need to be taking a look at and I'm doing this right now, the Forest Action Plan, the county plans, our county wildfire protection plans. We need to get those aligned. We need to get them readable and usable. And we want to make sure that they can function in a place that then when we're looking at doing a NEPA project, the Forest Service at the BLM can reference them. They make sense. They align with our goals and what we're trying to say is the top priority. And so one of the things we're really thinking about is looking at for NERPA, looking at what do we need to do as a state to get a little bit more aligned. We love each being different. Each forest loves being a little different. Each of my districts love being a little different. But I need some standardization, and I need plans that then we can turn around and say, your forest plan or your NEPA plan needs to reflect and think about what our priorities are here on the ground. So those are some things I think we can work on as a state together at different levels to start aligning there, whether it's game and fish and state forestry and the state agencies and where our priorities align and how our plans work, as well as the counties and the cities. And then at the same time, I do think we've seen real positive work done, like as we showed you. That's why we brought Chief Schultz in. When we can align and all get behind, like we want this needs to get done, we can move. We just need to build the culture of wanting to move. And that's what we've also really focused on with our federal partners, is building that culture of going from scoping into the end, and like that this is okay, we can all do this together. Who do we need to bring to the table to make that work? And then on top of it, when we get it done, we bring in the chief of the Forest Service and say, look what that district ranger did above and beyond, and let's see more of that type of work done. And so we have been really focused on that as well, because some of NEPA is going to be NEPA no matter what. Some of it is also personality. Some is also a little bit of culture. And I think this state has really focused on how can we at a local level help move that forward. And those are some of our ideas that we've been actually in the background talking about, even with the counties a bit.
Thank you for that. I'll be real brief here, not to be the one asking all the questions here, but it was about a year ago, that we proposed legislation to amend Good Neighbor so private sector could add to that along with the federal government. Have you seen any action on that? And in one of your pie charts here, you've got 2.2 million collected. Where is that 2.2 million coming from? And did that legislation, or do you think it's going to help Good Neighbor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are correct. We did open up Good Neighbor Authority to take in additional funding. We have not seen that yet, but it's only been a couple months. That 2.2 million, over $1 million of that is coming from timber sale revenue from the Black Hills. The majority of our timber sales do not produce revenue in the state. They're just so far away from a mill. They're just not the same products. The products in the hills, so over half of that revenue, if not more, is coming from the Black Hills. We were utilizing some of that revenue, and we will for a contract forester even, so to help pay for some staffing for that. But our hope is we're going to start to see some more investment as we grow the program, and the need is there. I would expect that there is going to not just be industry from timber. Some of the other places we've been really looking at, and I've been looking at where are people investing, where are companies investing in watershed work, in forest health work. There's been quite a movement in that in Arizona and in California. So how can we bring that to Wyoming? We're headwaters, as well as utilities and things like that I think could possibly be looking at where can they invest in and see a result from the investment that they make.
Okay, thank you. One last question. I know I've asked this in the past. And by the way, congratulations on those numbers from going from 28% to 59%. And those are the kind of things we like to see here as state when I'm not on the appropriations committee, but it's always good to see if you're gaining ground anywhere. The product and the purchasers. If we have more product that is streamlined and you can get to it, are the purchasers there? And what is that product? Is it firewood, posts and poles, or what's the majority of the product?
Mr. Chairman, that is another very good question. Depends on where you are and what forest you're in. Of course, I know people hate that answer, depends. But that's true. The products that we have are a variety. We have forests in Wyoming that are pretty dead, okay? So we have 2 mills right now in Wyoming that are harvesting dead timber that have been dead for over 15, oh gosh, it's almost 20 years now, when the mountain pine beetle came through the Uintas, came through Medbo route. Eventually, we're gonna have to really think about that product is only going to be so good for so long, right? And so they're eventually going to need to start thinking about how we're going to bring green back into that system, what that's going to look like, what kind of products. So those products may possibly change also for those mills. But beyond that, we've also seen those mills diversify, especially in the Bridger Valley. When they go into a timber sale now, there'll be a product that will go for sawmill to a mill, but they also have a post and pole. And we're seeing post and pole. And what we're seeing is this coordinated effort of how do we get those products to where they need to go. Commercial firewood is obviously a huge area that we really do see where contractors can actually turn around and still make a profit and be able to mobilize that wood in many directions. It just takes coordination because you're dealing with private people buying firewood, but that's still very valuable, and it's really getting that product off the forest, not leaving piles up on the forest and getting use. With that being said, I do think what we're really trying to achieve, specifically why we picked the Bridger Teton and a bit of the Bighorns, was to develop the industry, the workforce industry. And one of the things our contracting systems can do is those small contractors don't have foresters like these mills may, right? They don't have somebody coming and helping and overseeing this, large scale operation. So a smaller contract in learning how to harvest effectively, have somebody there to support you through the state forestry, the district forester, the assistant district forester, building upon in that learning. We're hoping to build upon and grow that smaller industry because we really believe that that's going to be the heart of our economies, is continuing to have these smaller sawmills across Wyoming. We have that in certain pockets. We'd like to see that grow more. The more wood can move across the state, the better off Wyoming is in the industry. They can call each other, they can work with each other, take a product like Doug Fir or Ponderosa because you have a mixed timber sale. So those are the things we're trying to work with industry too, is them working together to create different products. But there is quite a bit there that we're also wanting to look at when it comes to biomass, when it comes to all of this other work. And I think we're going to continue to see that discussion as we finally get available timber consistent out there for industry. That has been our #1 goal. From that, we believe we're going to start creating all different kinds of products.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Norris. Committee, further questions? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions. Maybe our foresters already talked about them, and I missed them. Can you? I got about 3 of them. Can you tell us how our fire module setup is going? First,
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Senator Larson, thank you for the question. So our modules are getting set up. We are officially moving into the lander office and getting that set up. I can't speak high enough about the staff there at the Wyoming Resource Learning Center. We're moving out of our Riverton office with all of our staff and foresters into lander. We have hired a module leader, and the seasonals haven't been as hard to hire, probably because of the free housing. I think that module and lander, and they're going to be called the Gannett Peak module. The Gannett Peak module, I believe, has about 7 seasonals already confirmed. So that's moving along. The Douglas one, which is going to be called the Pronghorn module, that one, we are struggling. It's an awkward time of year to be hiring permanent firefighters. So we're still working through that, but our seasonal staff, I think we're at least at 6. We have secured 2 trailers for seasonal housing right there at the State Fairgrounds in Douglas. So State Fairgrounds has been phenomenal. We've also are working through an agreement and MOU with the NRCS for free office space right there in Douglas. But the Converse County Commissioners are helping us with, some small office space in between that point. So I can't say enough about, again, the Converse County Commissioners. They're really helping us with getting Douglas set up and the Pronghorn module. So we're getting there. We have some small goals, right? Like we need them out on fires in July. We have talked to our counties. I just talked to the Fremont County Fire Warden earlier this week about how we can get that module set up to do fuels work. We want them to complete 1 project yet this year, but our trucks are in. They're almost done. We're getting set up. Our equipment, it's hard to order 24 of anything, so we're getting all the equipment we can get. And we just can't say enough about the support we have received from the fire districts, the county commissioners, and our state agencies who are helping make this happen.
That's good to hear. That's great. You got the trucks and getting the equipment, and that's fantastic. That's what we wanted. We wanted it ready for the season, right? Is there any more on that?
I can, Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, I think we're trying to get ready for the season as best we can. Unfortunately, I feel like it's already here. We have fires in the Bridger Teton, and we have a fire in Thunder Basin right now too. But we're trying to get ready for the actual true probably fire season, and we'd like them pretty set up and established early July and ready to go as best we can get there. And we do also, our federal partners are also willing to help us stand these up. Everybody's very excited in the fire world about having these 2 modules available for use. So I would leave it at that.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Senator
Oh,
Larson.
okay,
By the
thank
way,
you.
By the way, he's on the Appropriations Committee too, so just so you know.
Thank, that's good to hear, that it's going well. The next question you kind of mentioned a little bit, current fires that we're having and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little on that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, absolutely. We received some moisture. I felt like this last month there was some snow. I think Cheyenne got almost 12 inches and then it was gone. So we've had significant fire activity this week. In particular, we had lightning in May, start a fire in the Bridger Tetons, very visible from what I gather. We had fires. There was at least multiple ones in Converse County, a couple in Campbell, I think Crick and Weston, and then Nebraska started having some pretty large ones right on the border near Torrington in the last couple days. We've been able to get around all of those fires except for there's one called Rochelle 2 that actually started on the Thunder Basin National Grasslands. We're still helping support it, but both of the fires right now that are still active are federal fires, which has been a nice change for us in the state. So the Bridger Teton has one, and the Thunder Basin National Grasslands is still maneuvering one. And the fire risk is still high today and tomorrow. The relative humidity today is going to drop down to 8 in certain areas. That is concerning. There's been quite a bit of aviation. Our aviation does not start until the helicopter, our Type 3 helicopter, comes on next week. All the rest of our aviation, the second helicopter, and all 4 single-engine air tankers are going to start June 1st. We will have them, we're setting up the Gillette seat base. They're in Campbell County, and then we're going to have the other 2 in Worland. So we decided to bring all 4 on right away instead of wait till the Casper tanker base to open on June 15th. So we're going to bring them on a little earlier because of the activity that we are seeing.
Thank you. Good, thanks. That's good to hear. Hopefully we don't get fires, but they'll come. The last question would be the smoke jumper program and maybe a little update on that. And the current smoke jumpers.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Chairman, Senator, yes, so we did offer up the position that the legislature provided for the smoke buster leadership role. We have filled that with staff from within, moved them up, and we now have another position open for internally to start building upon that needed and necessary depth in that program. We have been coordinating with Wyoming Department of Corrections, pack testing, and I believe we're getting close to that. We've been trying to get to 20 to 25 inmates. It's hard because this is also the time some of them are leaving. But at the same time, we're bringing on quite a few. We'll go through the 2-week fire training to get them certified through firefighter type 1. And then we also do a chainsaw training class as well. So we're going to do that with all of them yet this month, get them ready to go. They did respond to 2 fires this spring already. That program, they both were one was in the Bighorn, both were in the Bighorn. One was in southern Johnson County, one was in northern Johnson County. So they're incredibly important when it comes to that kind of off season as well. And we did get a truck ready for that group as well. One point to note is we have hired our first graduate from that program. He is on the HeliTAC program this year. And we had applications for some graduates in Douglas. We'll see. I haven't gotten confirmation if we've been able to hire them yet. So that's a huge step in the right direction. something that program is really proud of. They've worked really, really hard to see those graduates actually have a position at the end of their work, and so that's really great to see. We're going to learn so much from having that one graduate with us this summer. But yeah, we're working pretty hard and diligent on that program. We know, and in Wyoming Department of Correction, I can't say enough about them as well. They've been very helpful. They've helped work with us and coordinate, making sure we have enough and the right type of group to build that cohesion for the summer.
That's great news too. It's a great program. I think I named it wrong. It's the Smoke Busters instead of the Jumpers. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Larson. Good questions. Yeah. The Ghostbusters. Yes. Committee. Anything more for Ms. Norris? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, committee, let's see. What's the next thing? Do we have the Bureau of Land Management representation here? And if they'd like to come up and say anything. Doesn't look like it. Okay, we'll move on to public testimony. Oh, yes. Yes, we do. They're the third one on here. Come up, sir, please, and introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from, and you have the floor.
All right, I'll try to be brief. Well, good morning, Chairman Ide, Co-Chairman Wharf, and members of the committee. I'm Chad Hudson, Acting Deputy Regional Forester for the USDA Forest Service Intermountain Region, representing the Ashley, Bridger Teton, Caribou Targhee, and Uinta-Wasatch Cache National Forest. I'll also attempt to represent Rocky Mountain Region, which covers the national forest in the eastern part of the state, includes the Bighorn, Black Hills, Shoshone, Mesbo Forest, and Thunder Basin National Grassland. Thank you for the opportunity to come before the Select Natural Resources Committee, and thank you for holding this meeting adjacent to the Bridger Teton National Forest. I feel the Bridger Teton is a good location to highlight the exciting possibilities associated with renewed shared stewardship partnership and demonstrate what is possible utilizing the Good Neighbor Authority, or GNA, to work jointly with the state and Wyoming agencies. I would like to thank the Wyoming State Forestry Division, Wyoming Department of Agriculture, Wyoming Game and Fish, Wyoming State Parks, and Wyoming Department of Transportation for their continued partnerships. USDA Forest Service is excited to move into a new era of shared stewardship with the state of Wyoming, centered around our mutual commitments to collaborative planning and management, expanding existing successful partnerships and programs, and resource sharing to facilitate work across the landscape. Together, we can address the challenges faced by managers of national forests and grasslands. We have GNA agreements with Wyoming Department of Agriculture, Wyoming Game and Fish Commission, and Wyoming State Forestry Division. The Wyoming Department of Agriculture, through a GNA agreement, is planning to contract NEPA right here in Pinedale, in the Pinedale District of the Bridger Teton National Forest, to authorize use of vacant allotments. The Forest Service has GNA agreements with the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission and is poised to work jointly with the department on specific projects throughout the state. And our GNA agreements with the Wyoming State Forestry Division have made a substantial impact, both in terms of yield and outcomes on the ground. We cannot thank our Wyoming State Forestry partners enough for leaning into active forest management with the national forests in Wyoming. Under the umbrella of Wyoming Shared Stewardship Agreement, the Forest Service has reaffirmed our commitment to working collaboratively with the state on securing timber industry, revitalizing the economies, and protecting communities from catastrophic wildfire. Leadership at both the state and federal level are working to add an additional $2 million into a supplemental project agreement for active forest management to continue to build upon this work. In fiscal year 2025, Wyoming National Forest produced 43.2 million board feet of timber to contribute to local mills. The GNA agreement with the Wyoming State Forestry Division contributed 28% of that volume delivered. Kelly kind of stole my thunder there. Estimates of production for 2026 is planned to produce approximately 85 million board feet coming off National Forest System lands in the state of Wyoming, of which we expect the Good Neighbor agreements to account for about 59% of that volume. Again, Kelly took my numbers there, but I think it's really important to note that there's just no way we can increase our volume output without the help of the state. And so we are very excited about that partnership with the Forestry Division. I would like to provide some additional perspectives from our local forest, the Bridger Teton. From 2013 through 2025, the average annual volume sold was approximately 4 million board feet.
Excuse me, how many?
4 million.
4 million. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problem. And I've got more numbers, so feel free to stop me. The BTNF's 2028 volume goal is 10 million board feet. Given our partnership with the Wyoming State Forestry Division and renewed focus on active management, the Bridger Teton National Forest will hit the 2028 target this year with planned contract volume of 5.6 million board feet and planned fieldwood permit volume of 4.6 million board feet. That equals a approximate 10.2 total volume off the BT this year. The outlook of shared stewardship of the National Forest in Wyoming is still progressing. The Kimmer Ranger District in Lincoln County was recently selected as one of 2 pilots in the state to help implement the shared stewardship agreement between the state of Wyoming and the U.S. Forest Service. The shared stewardship pilot is located on the second shared stewardship pilot is located on the Bighorn National Forest. Both pilots involve the forest and the state determining the most efficient way to lay out, sell, and administer timber sales to respond to Executive Order 14225, immediate expansion of American timber production. Both units contain cleared NEPA that will create a reliable and predictable pipeline for industry. And Kelly talked about that a little bit earlier. Industry can't invest unless there's a clear, predictable pipeline, and we have that in these 2 pilot areas that we're partnering with the state on. Your committee's trust and support associated with the shared stewardship is greatly appreciated. As a result of your support, the Kimmer Ranger District is staffing up to increase volume output. Specifically, we are excited about the Assistant District Forester for the Wyoming State Forestry Division has been hired and will sit in the Kimmer District. This position starts Monday, May 16th. Additionally, a state G&A forester should be advertised soon, and that person will also sit in Kimmer. In closing, I appreciate this opportunity to join today's hearing to discuss how the state of Wyoming and the Forest Service are embracing a shared stewardship approach to active management across jurisdictional boundaries to ensure we create a healthy and maintain healthy and resilient landscapes to reduce wildfire risks to communities while providing important economic benefits to local economies throughout Wyoming. I look forward to reporting progress in future years and welcome any questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Question?
Chairman.
Senator Dockstader.
3 questions. Appreciate you coming, Supervisor. Total volume in the Bridger Teton again, and then the Grays River District chosen for shared stewardship agreement. Could I better understand what a shared stewardship agreement is and the name of the position starting Monday in Kimmer? Those 3 questions.
Yep, Chairman.
Go ahead.
So the first question was total output.
Total volume.
This year, we're looking at 10 million.
Thank you.
Yep. And it's about half and half saw timber and fuel wood permits, basically a little bit more saw timber. So again, we were talking earlier, I think Kelly was just mentioning that we've lost a lot of our industry in Lincoln, Sublet kind of area, Sweetwater. A lot, we have Southland Jones that comes up, but we need to grow our industry. And so, as you know, Senator Dockstader, we're trying to sell a lot more small sales on the Bridger Teton as part of this effort to hopefully encourage folks to invest and to grow with us. I think we really need industry, along with the state G&A program, to all grow together in order to increase our output in this particular area, Sublette County, Lincoln County in particular.
Thank you.
Remind me your next question.
Shared stewardship agreement. Help me understand that.
Yep. So the state of Wyoming and the USDA Forest Service signed a shared stewardship agreement, and actually Kelly submitted that for your awareness. You can read through that. But essentially is a commitment for us to work together jointly across jurisdictional boundaries to share resources. We have different authorities. So we have certain authorities to, for instance, sell a timber sale. The state has different authorities, and there's some situations where it just makes sense for the state to sell the cells rather than us because it's a more efficient system. So shared stewardship is really just a philosophy that we're going to work together, not just in forestry, but we're starting conversations now with the Parks and Rec. We're starting conversations with the Department of Ag. How can they help us with our range program? And so I think that the idea is it's more a philosophical approach that we're going to work and coordinate. And in some cases, the state will take a lead effort on some of the work that we do on national forest systems in the state of Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the Mr. Chairman, one follow-up, Monday, May 16th. Who starts in Kemmer?
I'm gonna have to ask Kelly the name, but it's
Kemmer's in the room, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstetter, her name is going to be Christina Kruger. She actually was a G&A forester in the Black Hills, contract G&A forester. What we have learned is that contract forestry position kind of funnels up to the permanent positions, right? So we're starting to build some depth with our G&A program into our actual forestry program itself. So she's going to come with background in Good Neighbor Authority and how the state does it, because she's coming from, she was a G&A forester in the Black Hills for us. So she'll be here as a permanent assistant district forester. And then we will be opening up a contract G&A forester. So we have 2 foresters here in Kemmer. And then we have the Pinedale office here as well. So we'll have 2 offices really connected to the Bridger Teton.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up. We're getting a district forester or we're getting a GNA forester, or we're getting both?
Mr. Chairman, you're getting an assistant district forester, and that is going to be there in Kemmer, and then you're getting a GNA forester as well. So the District 4 for Wyoming has typically carried a district forester and an assistant district forester, right? And then we've had 1 GNA forester, which was here in Pinedale. We're going to add a second GNA forester to be in Kemmer. And because we have received enough funding through the shared stewardship signing of that agreement to grow and have then, so that this area will have 2, a district forester, an assistant district forester, and 2 GNA foresters. One of the GNA foresters is permanent year-round, and then the other one will be a contract forester.
Mr. Chairman, one more if I could.
Go ahead,
We
Senator.
put these people in place. Do we need to, at the state level, ante up a little more? What do we need to do? I sense what you're telling us today is we're prepped to knock some timber out on the west side of the state.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
that is the goal. Is we when we look at our Good Neighbor Authority program, the western side of the state had a bit of a gap. And so by updating the Good Neighbor Authority statute, we are now being able to have some flexibility in the system. Now, to be quite clear though, there's been some challenges with Colorado and their GNA program. So we're moving timber on the Wyoming side, the Medbo, and we might even hire now a seasonal, because I have the ability and the flexibility through that, and hire it through the contracting system, a real quick seasonal to just help get things moving on the Medicine Bow, for example. So we're starting to see the Forest Service really lean on the state, and by having this flexibility in our system, we're able to respond quickly to hire where we need to hire, and then mobilize them where we need to mobilize them, and move those positions around as necessary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
To respond to your question about moving timber in this side of the area of the world, on the Bridger Teton, we have 5 years worth of cleared timber right now, NEPA cleared. So having the state assist with the layout, the sale and administration of these sales are absolutely critical. We would not be able to move that fast otherwise. So the addition of the GNA forester and assistant forester is going to be incredibly helpful for the Bridger Teton.
Co-Chairman War.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess, I mean, I'm excited about the GNA program and how much it's growing and doing. I guess the question I have is, are there other problems that we need to help you guys address? I mean, that's kind of what I would like to get from you guys is, what roadblocks do you experience, whether they're coming on the federal side or whether they're coming on the state side? What can we do to help remove some of those problems and continue to see this program excel and exceed?
Well, I'm going to first say that, I just mentioned a couple things. There's so many good partnerships right now the state, the Forest Service has with the state and with the counties through GNA. There's a lot of good work being done. And I think that the possibilities are endless, really. I think that we have the Forest Service under Chief Schultz are really starting to look for really good positive partnerships and kind of a co-stewardship kind of approach. And I feel like we can now partner through GNA with any county or any state agency. And it's not what we work on is open to consideration. Like I mentioned earlier, that we are actually partnering with the Department of Ag to help us do NEPA for vacant allotments. That's something we wouldn't heard of several years back. So that I think the possibilities are endless, and we are looking for those type of relationships and to help us work through some sticky challenges.
Thank you.
Committee? More
Mr.
questions?
Chairman?
Senator Larson, yeah, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just was kind of going to ask the question, is how is industry responding, and are they trying to prepare for some increased volume production and stuff? And if so, you mentioned 5 years out that you have some NEPA's taken care of, so that's a ways out there, but is there encouragement there that it might even be out further, maybe 10 years?
Go ahead.
Chairman, Senator Larson, a couple thoughts. We are meeting with industry once or twice a year, and the idea is to ensure that the sales that we're putting up meet their needs and their demands and whatever product they're looking for. So, and over time, we hope to attract more industry. I mentioned earlier that we are trying some very small sales, and the idea here is that we often get people come to these district offices and ask for a small sale. They can't bid for the big sales, right? And so we have not in the past had a product for them or kind of an opportunity. And so we're now going to experiment with smaller sales. An operator might have a handful of years to target a very small kind of acreage sale. And so hopefully we'll bring them along and they'll be able to invest in equipment if they see that we have 5 years of timber sales lined up. I do feel like we need more than 5 years. And I think that is something we're going to strive for is it's to even put more shelf stock. That's what we call it when we have cleared NEPA shelf stock on the table so that we can just give industry the confidence to go out and get a bank loan, to get a piece of equipment, and to partner with us in a longer time frame. So we're striving to literally rebuild industry, especially over here on the western side of the state. It's a long process, but I think it really starts with us showing a vision and having a pipeline that they can rely on and have confidence in.
Mr. Chairman, that is
Go ahead.
good. That's good news. And obviously we all worry that, yeah, we buy equipment and then not be able to pay for it. So I hope we keep that up, and hopefully we can get through a new presidential administration and keep it moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Larson. Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Chairman, to our first supervisor, you've just touched a chord with me, because unlike our chief of staff from Senator Brassel's office, who wasn't born yet in 1985, I was running a media business in the western side of the state in 1985, and I watched the timber industry close down and 100 basic jobs and then spin-off jobs all throughout our area, and we had to rebuild our valley economy. I can remember the day that the timber manager walked into my office and handed me the news release saying we're closing. What we have here is some promise, and it probably comes back through these small timber harvests. That's the key. How do we set some, and I don't know that you had the answer to that or anybody, how do we set up these support operations? Representative Erickson and I have been talking about that. How do we set up support operations to keep these small timber production, these small timber sales and the production and all that moving so that we can have somebody in place and we can just keep it moving and we kind of rebuild the industry from a smaller standpoint, but maybe a more solid standpoint. If you want to offer thought to that, that's fine. If not, that's fine. Thank you.
Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Kelly mentioned that there's a field trip coming up, and I would like to see those every year. I would love to see us continue this dialogue. It is not easy to rebuild the industry, especially with the haul cost and the cost of equipment. And I think that we all need to stay engaged with the industry and learn from them what are their biggest challenges. And I think that's not one meeting. That's not just one-off. I think that's an iterative process. Conditions change, markets change, and so I think we're going to make a commitment to meeting with the industry and quite often. And we invite you all to join us when we have field trips. We'll get the industry out there, and I think we need to listen to what their biggest challenges are. And we can do some things as far as what products we're offering, the size of the sales, the location of the sales when it comes to haul routes. But the reality is it's not easy. It's a hard industry to make a living in. But we certainly need that industry and so I think it's, I encourage you to stay engaged, and we'll hopefully find opportunities for us to meet with industry and really get some insight into what challenges they have and where we can help.
Committee. Couple of quick ones, playing off of some of these other comments. From a high level, you talked about output volume, 2013 to 2025. When was the so-called high water mark in the timber industry in Wyoming, and what caused that? Senator Dockstader brought up in the 1980s, the industry got decimated. What was the cause of that? I mean, when was the high water mark really in timber sales, volume, output, and why did it go south, so to speak? Was it NEPA? Can you just kind of give us a broad overview of the history of, in a short, not to drag it on, but explain to us why the ebbs and flows in the industry?
Yeah, I'd have to do some research to really answer that thoroughly, and potentially Senator Dockstader can do a better job than me. But I will say it's probably many variables, right? Market conditions. NEPA existed before the 80s, so I wouldn't just put that, exactly. That probably could be a variable, right? And ESA issues, whatever they might be. It's hard for me to really. I don't want to guess, but we could try to do some research and get back to you on that, and definitely can give you some data as far as the volume output on any given forest or throughout the forest in the state of Wyoming, and then we could potentially find someone to help us understand what those variables were that caused the downfall of the industry.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I mean,
it'd be interesting. Yeah.
It would be. I like graphs.
Yeah.
Scaled. NEPA came in here, timber sales, if that's the case,
yeah.
and pictures tell us 1,000 words usually, and you can kind of see, gives everybody an idea, here's what, where they put the clothesline up and knocked us off our horse, so to speak. You know what I mean? Yeah. Last question. I'm from Natrona County. We've got Casper Mountain, Muddy Mountain, Laramie Range. I assume that's part of the Medicine Bow National Forest. I'm not entirely sure, but I buy some timber, mainly corral poles from a sawmill, one-man kind of operation, Powers Logging out of Douglas. He's been there for a while. He's a small operator, good operator. He's about the only guy I see bringing, timber off of Casper Mountain Road. You hear about a lot of the bigger areas that a lot more production. Either one of you, just explain to me, how is the Laramie Range fit into things? Is there much production there? I'm just curious. It's kind of a personal question.
I'd have to look that up and give you that data. I don't have it offhand.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Kelly, go ahead, and if you have a comment on that.
Sure. So the Laramie Range is really unique. It's a very interesting makeup. When you look at Casper Mountain, that's some state trust land actually up top there. The BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, actually has a significant amount of timber up on top. And then as you move farther down, that's the Laramie Range, and it's really intermixed. It's actually interesting though, because it's pretty flat on top once you get up on top above Esterbrook and that whole area. That hasn't been typically as productive. It is Ponderosa. So that's what probably Powers, I'm assuming, is typically taking off is Ponderosa. There is some lodgepole though up on top of Casper as well. I know that we have contractors from the Bighorns that bring wood down to Casper as well, but I'm understanding that we even have a small sawmill open in Wheatland. So there's smaller item, specialized sawmills. I believe a couple in Casper actually, and along that Laramie Range. But there is real opportunity. And when we've met with the Medicine Bow route, that has been an area where they've been missing NEPA. I think since the Arapahoe fire and cow camp that really burned off Laramie Peak and that whole area, there was a substantial amount of restoration work that went into that section, and quite a bit of it was federal timber, quite a bit of it was state, and so we're definitely relooking at that area. One of the reasons we wanted to put that regional manager for the fire module in Douglas was to get it closer to that part of the Laramie Range and work on fuels and start building that program a bit more. I'm thinking more state parks when I think about that too. You got Glendale, Guernsey, you have that whole area with all that state infrastructure, but you have a ton of infrastructure up on top of Casper Mountain, and you're well aware of that. So there is small contractors here and there. There's quite a few, but that is another area we definitely look at with the Medicine Bow route and trying to build that small cross-boundary project work. And there was at least one, if not two or three applications for that area of Converse County, right behind, up against Natrona County there.
Great. That helps. Thank you. Yeah, there is a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of state land on Muddy, Casper Mountain, or Muddy Mountain in particular. Casper Mountain's mostly private, but Muddy Mountain, it's kind of interesting, just the conglomeration of state lands up on Muddy Mountain, and then a lot of BLM mixed in with it up there as well. So thanks for your comments there. Go ahead, Co-Chairman Wharf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Norris, one of the things I thought just from hearing you, would it be beneficial to get some type of a shared stewardship plan with the BLM? I mean, I don't know how much timber they have, but it seems like they're the entity that's missing in all this. And I know they don't really have the good neighbor authority that the Forest Service has, but I'm just wondering if maybe we shouldn't explore trying to get some type of a shared stewardship with the BLM so that in areas where they do have timber that we could coordinate that. Is that, I just don't know, you probably have a better feel for how much timber is on BLM lands, but is that something that you think would be beneficial?
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Wharf, yes. We actually are one of the only states in the United States to carry good neighbor authority agreements with the Bureau of Land Management. Most states really struggle. And there's actually a letter to DOI right now from the Council of Western State Foresters to the Secretary Doug Burgum requesting some really evaluation of the Good Neighbor Authority program and how it's set up. It's set up very differently, almost like a contractual agreement versus an agreement of mutual benefits, which is how it's set up through the Forest Service. Same farm bill, same authorities. They're setting it up very differently. They also, through the Department of Interior, which is very different than the Forest Service, their fuels is separated from their timber program. And what has just happened with fire is their entire fuels program and funding went to the new U.S. Wildland Fire Service. So we're not exactly sure where that's going to land when it comes to the agreements, because fuels now and prescribed fire will no longer be with that land management agency. So we're really not sure how that's going to play out, but that's going to get figured out. The same fuels managers that worked for the BLM will eventually, at least we're assuming, will end up over in the new fire service, right? And so that is something we need to work through. The Wyoming BLM State Forester definitely has been coordinating with us. The BLM has quite a bit of forested lands, and I actually brought an extra handout. You had the Rob Roy as an example for the Forest Service, but we actually have an excellent example that we can share with you, a one-pager called the Harper GNA Project. And we do quite a bit of coordinated BLM project work in the Black Hills. Because the BLM is incredibly interesting because their parcels actually intersperse with Wyoming state parcels quite a bit. There's quite a bit of overlap there. They have only about 4 or 5 foresters across the state that they're working with, but we coordinate with all of them and their state forester. But that is something we could explore, is as that there's transitions happening in the Department of Interior. Now would be an excellent time to, again, focus on that. The Bureau of Land Management is in our meetings when we have those statewide meetings. Heidi is there. She's talking with us. We're working through with our district foresters and our foresters with their one forester. They have an incredible amount of timber. When I was a district forester in the Bighorns, I was always jealous because they had more timber than even myself to go cut on state trust land. So they are a key partner, and we've actually, some of our largest GNA timber sales have happened with the BLM in the Bighorns, in the Laramies, actually Shirley Basin. It's where they've been really doing quite a bit of management there. And then in the Black Hills. Again, it's this access. That's part of the challenge, is always access, especially Casper Mountain. And so that's where we look to each other and how can we then expand. But there's also been some pretty large projects on the Medbo too.
Have anything more? Senator Larson, you good online?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, both of you. I appreciate your testimony. Okay, I think I kind of almost left the U.S. Forest Service out, and make sure I don't leave anybody else out here. I don't see anybody on the agenda. Is there any public comment on item number 5 on our program here? Committee, seeing no public comment. What's your pleasure? Want to discuss anything? Go from here? Co-Chairman Wharf, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we should make the request of Governor Gordon to try to get some type of stewardship agreement with the BLM. I don't know, it sounds like they've got a lot of timber, and it sounds like we're working really well together, but I still wonder if it wouldn't be beneficial to get some type of stewardship agreement between Governor Gordon and Secretary Burgum. I think that, to me, I think that's an easy request, but I think that's something that might have some good benefits for us if we could get some type of a stewardship agreement with the BLM. I mean, I think that's a simple request.
Committee good with that? Comments?
So
Okay.
could we maybe get LSO to draft a letter for us to do that? And basically just make that request to the governor and Secretary Burgum. Thank you. I guess we don't need to make a motion, we'll just do it, right?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we can do a absent objection. Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, thank you.
Got a lot more experience.
Yeah.
Seeing no objection, we'll go ahead and have LSO do something there. Co-Chairman Worf's request. The only comment I have is with U.S. Forest Service, Matt, and I don't know how the best way to do this is, but it would be nice to see a timeline on output volume, maybe even some speculation on why it dropped, you know, key things like NEPA or other unforeseen instances with a recession or whatever that caused the ups and downs of the industry in Wyoming in particular. That'd be great. So absent objection is that something you can do for as our federal partner? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else, committee? It's almost 1 o'clock. Everybody's probably getting hungry. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Let's adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks for coming, everybody.